Welcome to Podcasts Abbreviated. What you're about to hear is the breakdown of the previous episode of the Realignment and Andrew Schultz's thoughts on the future of new media. If you haven't heard it, I encourage you to go back and listen to the short abbreviation. In this episode, you'll hear how Tim and I approach news and media differently and how we are struggling to navigate the slanted and sensationalized news. One quick note, I mentioned the YouTube news show, The Rising. The hosts, Sagar and Jetty, also one of the hosts of the Realignment podcast, and Crystal Ball have gone independent and created a show called Breaking Points. In case you wanted to look them up, that's where you'll find them. Before we begin, if you like the show, please subscribe to the channel so you get notified every time we drop a podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube or most of the other social media platforms to find our videos we create of each abbreviation. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode where Tim and I spar on how to best handle our new media environment.
Hello, and welcome to Podcasts Abbreviated, where we break down the best podcasts into short episodes.
So you can discover new hosts and new podcasts and simply get to the best stuff faster.
Are you disappointed by 90% of the news you see out there? Are you wondering where you can actually go to get both or all the sides to an issue and know that it's fairly represented? Do you feel like newspapers are no longer serving you the news, but rather a sensationalist headline meant to provoke an emotional response in you instead of delivering the information that you need and want? And are you upset with yourself for falling prey to that trap over and over and over again? Because I know I am. I know that even though I know what they're doing to me, I still get plugged in, I doom scroll on my Facebook feed, and I get excited to read the latest headline and think I know what the article says just by the headline, and then I find myself realizing that I was deceived, I was let down, I was wrong.
I'm in that camp too. And actually what I hate the most is making a point, and while I'm making that point to somebody I care about, in that moment, recognize that I was fed that point by somebody.
Oh, I hate that, right? And then somebody calls you out and you don't know why you think the thing you
exactly.
Make. Oh man, I think we do that to each other a lot, don't we?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, the problem is you get fed so much, it's hard to parse out what you came up with yourself and what was supplanted from some article you read or some news,
Right. And I mean, especially in the age of Trump, I feel like that was more evident than ever, where it was just like Trump pissed people off, and then the media was pissed off at him, so they tried to take him down, but then that made the media out to be liars, and they were lying about his lies, and it got so deep that before you know it, you just don't know where to go and who to trust, and you feel like everybody is just full of
watching news today or just any sort of information. It's like three-card Monty. Like, you think you know which card is the queen of diamonds or whatever it is, but a day later you're going to find out you were completely lied to. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no truth out there. Everything is slanted. So in a world where everything's slanted, for anybody who is willing to be truthful, you can really, really move culture, man.
So what do you do about it? It seems very aggravating, extremely confusing. What are the steps you can take in order to start orienting yourself toward what is truthful and honest?
What I would say is stop watching the news. I think we are addicted to the news and we don't need to be. I don't think that you need the news. I think that they want you to think that you need to be plugged in. I've talked to people about this and I say, why, if you're so upset by everything you're reading, do you constantly read it? Why are you watching the news then? You can get everything you need to know in a daily email that just has the 10 bullet points of the most important news, and that's it. So I highly encourage people to unplug from the news. What do you think? Is that a good idea or bad?
Well, I think that's a good idea for some, but for some, there's an impulse to just know what's going on in their country, in their community. And if somebody brings something up to me, what do you think about this? I want to have an answer. I want to at least be prepared to know how I think about a specific issue if it comes up. And so I need to find a way to get that information in a way where it's not being manipulated from a specific source. And so the way I found the Realignment podcast was through The Rising with Sagar and Jetty and Crystal Ball, where at the very least, they're consistent. At the very least, from what I can tell over watching them for at least 8 months now, what they report is consistent with their principles. And so it does not feel like they're trying to manipulate me. And that is so refreshing that I come back to them. And so finding places that you trust, that's the whole point of this abbreviated podcast, finding either people or organizations. And I would say it's a lot easier for people because organizations have other incentives beyond just telling the truth. Finding the people that you can trust and relying on them for that news.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. Find the people you trust and stick to them. Are there other people that you trust other than The Rising?
Well, what's funny is I listen to Jimmy Dore, even though my natural inclination is conservatism. So like I came out of a conservative household and am starting to become I'm definitely politically homeless at the moment, but I've never been on the quote unquote progressive side of the political spectrum. However, Jimmy Dore is on that side. And so they're twofold. One, I actually like to listen to people who I trust who have a complete opposite opinion than me, because there's not that many people in my life. Most of the people that I gravitate towards agree with me. Most of the people I gravitate towards, we're not in conflict all the time, right? That's why a lot of times family members are the ones that you go home for Thanksgiving and you fight with, well, because you didn't choose to be in that family, right? So you can have a plethora of political opinions, but the people that you choose to be your friends and talk about this stuff with are generally on your same side. And so I like to go to the other side, but I also don't like to be manipulated. And so I can't be manipulated into being convinced to lean left if I'm on right on a topic, or lean right if I'm on left on a topic. So someone like Jimmy Dore, who's always advocating for progressive ideas, at least I can trust him. And then I can get the inverse of my perspective. And a lot of times I won't change my mind, but at least I have a more complete picture of the policy or of the topic at hand. At least I now have empathy for the other side because I trust him, and he comes from what I can tell a pure natural place where he's not trying to manipulate anybody. And so it's okay. Hey, I'm not going to demonize that side anymore because I know somebody on that side that I respect and that I trust. And so when I don't demonize the other side, when I at least understand the other side, then now I can make the informed decision to say, you know what, I still don't agree with it, and I don't agree with it because of this. And that argument is going to be much stronger because of that.
That's right. I mean, I really appreciate that approach, and I 100% agree. Seeking out those who disagree with you. You know, for a while I was reading allsides.org. Are you familiar with allsides.org? Yes. It's a good place to go to get what both sides of the media might be saying about a topic. You know, there's a couple other newsletters that focus on aggregating the news and showing you how the different perspectives out there are tackling it. You know, I liked that, but it did take a lot of energy to read the stories from both sides. It's kind of boring after a while, so there's some downside to that. I do love the model of The Rising with two different hosts. You know, what happened to that? I feel like back in the day, cable news, you know, Hannity and Combs is the one that comes to mind, where you would have a left and a right side, and at least you knew you could watch one show and get it back and forth and an argument and try to kind of get the take, and somebody's there to call them out when they disagree. You know, that being said, I haven't been able to watch The Rising. I don't really watch a lot of news personally. I like to read it. I like to get an email with the 10 bullet points. Tell me kind of what the most important things are. I like to go to Twitter. I think Twitter's an interesting place to get news, although it's very toxic on there as well, because that's where you can call people out immediately and post links to your defense. But I think the key is to take it all with a grain of salt. Even if you do trust somebody, I would still take them with a grain of salt and separate yourself a little bit, create space between the headline and then your reaction to it. You might not be able to control what the headline says, but don't feed into the very thing that you don't like, which is rageaholism and getting pissed off without actually looking at the facts. Something that strikes me is just how hard it is, even when you're there at an event, to know what is happening. It's weird how you would expect today, with the plethora of cameras and cell phones, you'd think we'd be getting closer to knowing what's happening. But I, with my own eyes over the last year, have been face to face with news breaks in person, and I totally got the situation wrong because your eyes can deceive you, and it takes time to figure these things out. So I think part of what we need to do is not demand to know or get the take immediately. Maybe report what happened, and it's okay to not know.
I mean, that's a pipe dream from major news organizations. There's always going to be this competition for whatever perspective is going to garner the most views. That's the market in which we're fighting against. And those forces are strong,
being first. And sensationalization, we know works. Like, these things work. That's why they're out competing reporters who provide realistic and analyzed over time reports on a situation. It's more boring.
The reality is most people want the security of the party, right? And it's way easier to monetize and get views when you're tapping into an existing belief system. The way our brains work is, I feel something, now tell me why it's right. So there's always going to be a space for people who tell you why you're right. And that's, I think, the space that we're in right now, is people are tired of the extremes. They just want something truthful and reasonable. They're actually tired of the candy. Because being told you're right is eating candy. So you eat candy all day, you're like, oh, I love the taste of candy. And eventually you're like, man, there's no nutrition. I need some salad. I need some vegetables. So they're searching for vegetables.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that news is entertainment?
Sometimes, definitely. All the time, no, not all the time. A lot of the times I'm trying to figure out how I feel about something that's going on in the world and how I want to integrate what's going on into my principles, into what I believe in something. So sometimes yes and sometimes no.
I think that's part of the problem, is that we look to be entertained by the news. We want that burst of dopamine, that hit of confirmation bias. I get off on when I hear disagreement and thoughtful discussion and debate and argument, and I get that, oh my gosh, this is it. They're really going at it thoughtfully, you know? And I just wonder if there's a way, if that's okay, you know, or is that also part of the problem? Should we be looking at news more like eating your vegetables? Is it like, should it be like, well, this is what we must do as engaged citizenry and we have to read the news and pay attention? Because honestly, what it sounds like we're kind of asking is like, can we make things more boring? You know?
Well, that's kind of a problem, because when media is commoditized, boring and non-entertaining intrinsically don't sell. And so when media is an arm of a corporation where it's literally just has a profit margin, to where if you're looking at a P&L and the news division is losing money, then you're going to ask, what can we do to make more money? And the answers to that are not make things more boring and less entertaining.
And so is there an argument that we want non-profit news? If it isn't a for-profit model, what other model could work?
In time, the truth doesn't get stale. You might say something that's truthful right now, but it's just whack and nobody wants to hear it. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 months from now, people might come back to be like, man, all right, that was right. And then they trust you. They might have hated you that 1 week, but they're like, you know what? He's going to say the painful, unnecessary shit that we have to do. He's not going to just run after the money.
I just loved that Andrew Schultz was talking about how you got to get out there and over time the truth will win. I think it's true. I think that over time we trend positive. We trend, not always, there's blips. We've reversed course in the short term, but in the long run, I just have faith in people. And I think that over time, the best news stations that do what you're talking about, present multiple sides, give the facts, can and will rise above and be the ones that make the most money too.
And I would advocate for supporting those. It's easy to go to CNN.com. It's easy to flip on whatever news channel. That's easy. But there are a lot of people doing this out there that may just hit what you're looking for, may just meet you where you're at, and maybe the type of personality that you like. So go find those people. Yeah. Like whether they're writers on Substack, whether they're YouTubers, seek those out and support those people, even if it's just with your clicks or with your views. It's like supporting local businesses, or it's like supporting companies where you support their values. Make choices with your dollar or even with your eyeball. You don't even have to pay. Make choices of what you want to manifest with your clicks. And all you have to do is just get past the general film of the top layer garbage stuff and go one layer below that. It takes a little bit of work, but once you find that person, now it's easy again. Now anything they put out, you listen to and you follow, and you get a couple of those people. I just try to find one person who takes up each point consistently. So Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, Jimmy Dore, The Rising. And it's so nice now that I have this group of people that I listen to, it's so easy because I hear from each side, I get the different perspectives, and you're right, there's not a lot of places where they will synthesize it for me on both sides. There's not a lot of places where they'll have that back and forth on both sides. But just by going and following these people, they now come to me. Right? I'm subscribed to them. So their stuff comes to me. I don't have to look for it anymore. It comes to me, and all I got to do is listen to it. And then it ends up kind of brewing inside of me the different takes on each topic. And then honestly, talking to you, Tim, and other good friends, it's exactly what it does. It just brews. And then finally, out of that brewing comes a fully baked idea that is wholly mine. And I think that's the only way you can get a perspective on a controversial or difficult topic that's fully yours, is you have to hear these sides, integrate them, think on them, and then it just comes out and, hey, now this is Chris's take, because it involves a little bit of Matt Taibbi, a little bit of Glenn Greenwald, a little bit of somebody else, a little bit of Tim, but it's my own take. And that's how I manufacture my takes. And I'm so confident then that when challenged, I have answers for them. And I know deep down, I'm not just parroting somebody else. That feels really good.
I get that. I'm getting to a similar place, and I'd have to think about how and where I get my news. For example, I've curated a Twitter feed of just diverse viewpoints where I intentionally follow progressives, conservatives, libertarians, green folks. Like I try. It's interesting because I can almost see the patterns of media play out over and over again, right? And I can almost predict based on how one person is reacting, what the other person will be saying.
Oh my goodness.
And then boom, they say exactly what I think they would say because...
It's uncanny.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then there's always this like lull on the topic and it kind of fades away. And then somebody will 2 months later be like, remember when that thing happened and we thought it was all the rage, but now there's this other thing and that's now the thing. But one of the things that annoys me the most is how much people make news about what people agree and disagree with about the other side. Like how often the story is not the story. It's like, did you hear what that side said about this side? Or like the worst thing I see on Twitter all the time are people saying, where are the people who were mad about this thing now that this other thing is happening? It's like, oh, you were mad about that thing, but not this thing? Like, where was your voice now? And to me, it just feels like people are now demanding that if you aren't equally enraged by so many other things, that your rage on one issue isn't, present. Is this?
Well, I think it's the cheapest form of quote unquote journalism. If all you have to do is search Twitter, find something that somebody said that's inflammatory and literally put that up and you call that news, which happens half the time, right? Yeah. You don't actually have to go out there. You don't have to interview anybody. You don't have to have boots on the ground. It's the cheapest form. You just hire somebody to say, hey, current event X, look it up on Twitter. Find somebody who may be somewhat important and maybe completely anonymous, but has a tweet that, I don't know, is super inflammatory. Throw that up and maybe throw 5 more tweets up for good measure and call it a day. Because guess what? You're going to get clicks on that. So again, that goes back to what we're talking about is like, if you can avoid that with your click, it's like you exercise your purchasing power with what you want to support. Same thing with clicks. But the problem is even I find myself, I'm not even I, like I'm better than everybody else, but like I am intentional about this. And I am depressed and saddened when I find myself on a website and I've already clicked on the thing. And what it is a bunch of tweets. And the headline is something inflammatory saying, can you believe what this person said about this? Or can you believe what the worst is what nobody's saying about this topic? So how do we avoid getting in those traps?
I already said it. Pull out, withdraw, stop paying attention to the news. You don't need as much news as you think you do. I don't think you, Chris, need to have an opinion on everything. I think that that's overly ambitious. I think that you should be focused on building our business. I think you should be focused on focusing your time on providing value to other people. I think it's a trap to think that we need to have an opinion on everything, that we need to have a take on it, that if we're trapped not having an informed thing, we're going to look like an idiot. I mean, that's our ego talking, thinking that we have to know about this. I think withdrawal from the systems that are bad is sometimes the only thing you can do.
Okay, so now in this moment of deep reflection, I do want to be right in a conversation when it comes up. I want to look smart.
Of course.
To look smart, a lot of times, unless you're conning someone, you have to actually be educated. But ultimately, yeah, I want to be the kind of person who has a sophisticated opinion with principles in different domains. And you're telling me that could be a waste of my time.
Absolutely. What value does it provide?
It strokes my ego.
There you go. If I mean, I get it. I do the same thing. I also want to have a take. But what I've realized is, honestly, you don't talk to that many people about this stuff. How many people?
A lot of the same people.
Really. Right. And they already know who you are. They believe you. Like,
but I can change their minds. And if they only listen to my well-formed arguments, their lives would be changed forever.
And what? You're going to get one more vote to the thing that you want them to vote for? Yeah. Or like... I mean, it's fun if you put it in but this is what I'm trying to say is like, if you put it in the category of entertainment, go for it. In the same way that I want to watch movies and have a take on the movies like that I see and can talk about with my friends, great. But the stakes are not as high as you think they are, and don't overinvest in it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I get a daily email called the Daily Inside Scoop or something, 10 headlines every day. What I have found is I read that email, and then I also subscribe to the Washington Post. I've actually subscribed to the New York Times before that. I currently subscribe to the Seattle Times, and I've been working my way through different papers, and I'll subscribe for 6 months. My point is, after reading that daily 10 and like spending what's roughly 10 minutes on that, it's hard to then go into any of these other sources and find that much more that wasn't already covered in that 10 headlines. Isn't that how media works? It's like, these are the 7 headlines of the day, and every news station is talking about just about the 7 headlines with a different take, slightly different thing. Maybe somebody has a scoop, and as soon as the scoop comes out, then everyone else jumps on that topic and writes their own thing about it. And it's rare to then discover something new or some new take on the thing when it only takes 10 minutes. And honestly, you probably already know what you think about those things when you read the headline. Yeah. And I wonder how often it's like, oh, you hear Jimmy Dore or Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald, and suddenly you're like, oh, wow.
Sometimes. But it's lower than what
I want more of that for sure.
Investment.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I would consider. What happens
when the one day where the reporter sticks a microphone in my face and it's like, Chris, what do you think about this topic?
They are going to make you look like a fool no matter what you say. They're going to take whatever you say and they're going to spin it into their bubble, and they're going to use you as a tool. I was used as a tool in Argentina. Did I ever tell you about this? No. I was with my brother in Argentina, and that was the day that Kirchner was speaking in downtown Buenos Aires, and it was like her big speech for the year. And we're out there getting hot dogs, and all of a sudden my brother taps on my shoulder, and there's a journalist with a microphone in his face. So the journalist just starts asking me questions about what I think about Argentina. Do I like the country? And he was harping on this one question. I didn't understand why. He kept asking me, what does the American media have to say about Argentina, and is it match up with what you're seeing? And I said, well, it kind of depends what newspaper you read to get a different opinion. And I thought that was fair. Pretty fair take. It depends. And he asked it over and over again. And I suddenly realized that like he wants me to say something, and I don't know what it is. So I just innocently just started blabbing my mouth about how in America there's different newspapers, they say different things, sometimes you don't know who to trust. Well, get this, it's late, Eric and I are going back to our hostel. I walk in the door, and the person who checks me in the hostel goes, there he is, and they pointed at me, and then everyone's like, look, this is the guy that was on national TV. I'm like, what? And immediately my phone blows up, and I have some friends from Argentina. They're like, Tim, you were just on the prime time #1 state-run channel in Argentina. I was like, what? They're like, your interview. It was the butt of the joke. It was the conclusion of the whole thing. So I immediately ran on YouTube, and I found the clip, and they totally took what I said, turned it around, and made it out to be a critique of American media and a support of Kirchner, her agenda, and that particular news station. And they ended with the butt of the joke saying, it depends which newspaper you read, as me saying that all of the other newspapers are liars and theirs is the true one.
Oh, wow. So complete distortion.
Complete distortion. And I saw that, and, no big deal, because whatever, it had no
But it's a great example. It's a great example of that. If you hadn't given them what they wanted, they wouldn't have aired you. Right. So it's not like your take would have been shown to people because
they edited it to be what they wanted.
But even so just say you never gave them what they want. My whole point is, it just would have been silenced.
What he would have done is gone to the next person and stuck until they get it. Exactly. I mean, that was what they were doing. All I'm going to say is, like, if it's that one day and somebody pulls you and they want to get your take, Chris, I would say, does it really matter?
No, it is about kind of me trying to become a well-rounded person and have sophisticated opinions on a variety of topics. I mean, that's what it is about.
Look, I'm just going to, you and I are in business together. We're doing Podcasts Abbreviated. If I were in charge of how you were spending your time, I would say spend another hour looking at video editing techniques or social media strategies, or
read
abbreviating
do the top minds,
podcast.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, listen to more podcasts of these top minds who are offering a wealth of experience that don't necessarily have to do with a current event, but have taken years of research and experience and are distilling it down for you. You don't have to do that 30 years. They give it to you in an hour or an hour and a half, or if you listen to Podcasts Abbreviated, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yes.
And then you can digest that and integrate that into my more nuanced and more sophisticated in terms of beliefs and understandings of the world around me. Do it with those instead of the news cycle.
And I mean, this is advice for me too, right? Like, I find myself scrolling on Twitter and spending too much time doing this. And I wish, maybe we can challenge each other. I mean, it'd be interesting. What if we recorded for the next week or two how much time we spend reading the news? Like, anytime you're reading the news, put on a timer. Yeah. Like, the way iPhone tracks my usage is very enlightening. I found out I was paying 10 hours of chess a week. My app. So this was like several months ago. Great. It was great. I loved it. I was playing it all the time, but I was using it as a distraction. I was using it as a, stressed, play chess. And I could see how different things can get replaced there. But as soon as I saw that stat, I'm like, well, look, it's good to know to play chess. It improves my cognition, but I was doing it too much. So I limited myself to one game a day, 10 minutes a day, and now I'm down to like 60 minutes a day, and it helps me. It's like a good
Here's what we got to do. Here's what I do. We got to have a challenge where who can at least list the major events of the week.
Yeah.
But spend the least amount of time watching the news.
Efficiency. I like it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do. And actually, we'll challenge you guys to do it too. So can you at least get what people want? Because you can't, like, this whole show isn't saying don't watch the news, but let's maximize the efficiency here. Let's get what you need and then get out.
Yeah.
So
yes. Get what you need out and then get out.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think that's a good place to wrap up here because this is a topic that Andrew Schultz made funny.
Yes.
This is a funny episode, and if you watch the full thing, the guy is hilarious. And the problem is, his analysis is funny, but it's not funny to waste your time on irrelevant information, to get wrapped up in the vortex of centralization, and to be manipulated. That sucks. So let's get out of that. And I know that this will help me do that, and I hope you guys can figure out ways to do that too. So, Tim, how should we end this?
We should end this by asking all of you to shoot us an email at podcastabbreviated@gmail.com. Check us out on our website, podcastabbreviated.com, and subscribe to our newsletter where we will send you the best podcasts. And maybe if we do this well, we can start abbreviating the news for people and giving them a 5-minute or a simple way to get what you need and then get out quick, because we know how toxic that cycle can be.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tim. Thanks
everyone
for listening.
Goodbye.
See you next week.